we all love to get on YouTube and watch videos of people trying to shoot their 458 Lod or their 505 Gibbs. And those videos usually leave you just laughing your ass off as they get knocked back because of the recoil, struck in the face, get a pinched hand, or, end up with a bruised shoulder. But it's not so funny when you realize that most of these rifles were purchased by people who plan to use them eventually on a dangerous game hunt. Basically, they bought a rifle that they can't handle and they plan to use it in a life or death situation. Now, their antics went from funny to stupid. The size of a person or their physical stature has very little to do, in my opinion, with managing recoil. Elmer Keith was worshipped as the big bore messiah, yet he was very small in stature. Buzz Charlton shoots elephants more than probably anybody hunting right now, and he's a little guy. Managing recoil requires technique, the right equipment, and the correct mindset. And in this video, I'll show you how to properly handle a dangerous game rifle. Many people in the hunting community are just absolutely stuck in their ways, and they won't even attempt to change their technique no matter how bad it is. They'll stand in that bladed stance like that with the toe of the stock just digging into their deltoid, and they'll continue to tell everyone how hard their rifle recoils. This video will not help those people, and frankly, nothing will. The large percentage of people watching this video probably fear big guns. People who fear dogs are much more likely to be bitten by a dog. And people who fear big bore rifles are more likely to be bitten by the big bore. The 505 Gibbs can sense your fear, and it's always going to turn that fear against you. Fear is what's going to cause you to flinch while you take the shot. Fear is going to cause you to push the gun away instead of wrestling it in tighter. And fear is going to cause your face to creep away from the stock and you'll get cheek slapped. If you're willing to learn, though, proper technique will help you overcome this fear. You'll look at the rifle as a tool that you control rather than an object that wants to hurt you. The phrase, "get into a fighting stance," has turned into somewhat of a cliche in the firearms world, but it's actually the best way to approach a shooting stance. Human beings are predators, and as predatory animals, we have eyes that face forward and provide binocular vision. To take advantage of this, we have to orient ourselves towards our prey or towards the threat when we hunt or fight. Otherwise our incredible depth perception and ability to see details is completely wasted. In addition to keeping our head oriented towards the threat or our prey, it's also good to square off your body slightly toward the threat to some degree. Squaring off your body gives you more stability and it lets the rifle butt sit squarely in the pocket of the shoulder. You see that? I'm oriented towards the prey right there. You can see that comes up and it fits squarely in the pocket of my shoulder right there. If I stand in too much of a bladed stance, like a biathlon shooter or competition shooter like that, you can see that the butt doesn't sit squarely in my shoulder. And you're going to get hammered by recoil and shoot less accurately like this. So, this works fine if you're wearing a shooting jacket and you have a palm rest and, you're shooting small bore competition or air rifle. A stance like this will work, fully bladed like that. But when you're hunting, especially with a lightweight hunting rifle and a bigger proper hunting caliber, you need to square off like that. You don't have to go fully square like some of the AR-15 guys, the tactical guys, but just slightly maybe 30 degrees, square your body towards the thread, and it'll fit right in that pocket right there. You won't be too far out like on your deltoid, and you won't be too far in on your collarbone. You'll be just right. With feet placement, I personally like my feet just over shoulder width apart, with my forward foot pointing at the target. But don't overthink footwork. Do what feels comfortable and natural. Just make sure you have that slight forward lean in the body, and most of your weight's on the balls of your feet rather than your heels. And another important aspect of your stance is to lean slightly forward. You know, you don't want to go too much forward, but just kind of lean slightly forward to where you're putting the majority of your body weight on the balls of your foot rather than the heels. You know, women are actually the hardest people to teach the offhand shot to because of their physiology. Women naturally want to lean back while they're holding a heavy object. You know, a lot of guys do this too. An instructor I used to know called guys that shot like this shooting style the gangster lean. You know, but you know, that gangster lean makes your stance unstable, and you know, it also messes with proper cheek weld and eye relief. And to tell you the truth, it makes the effects of recoil much worse too. So you always want to lean slightly forward in your shooting stance when you're shooting offhand. You know, I always teach people to hold your rifle like somebody's going to grab the barrel and try to throw you off balance. You know, imagine somebody grabbing the barrel of the rifle trying to throw you off balance. And if you could stay stable during that, you're in the right shooting position. If you learn to shoot offhand from a tactical instructor, understand that much of that instruction doesn't really translate into the bolt-action rifle world while hunting. You know, AR-15s have handguards that completely encompass the entire barrel, and you're probably taught to shoot with some variation of a C-clamp grip, you know, which is fantastic for transitioning between targets with a lot of control in a tactical environment. You know, or perhaps you prefer the magwell grip, or perhaps you prefer some type of thumb brake grip on a forward style grip device. But the point is that those training techniques revolve around close quarters combat with an assault rifle, not hunting with a hunting rifle. With a hunting rifle, you never want to use that C-clamp grip like that, because holding a thin profile hunting barrel by the barrel is going to throw off your point of impact. Also, optics on a hunting rifle are mounted much lower than an AR-15, so your hand over the barrel is going to block your sights. So that's no good. Basically, with the hunting rifle, just hold the forend in a way that feels comfortable for you, you know, without touching the barrel. You know, don't hold it loosely, but also you don't have to put the death grip on it. Another area where hunting differs from tactical shooting is trigger hand and arm placement. You know, a tactical gun has a pistol grip on it, and that pistol grip allows the user to tuck the elbow down tight into the body for a compact and rigid structure. By contrast, the wrist on a hunting rifle requires the shooter to slightly flare their elbow outward, which is okay. But I personally prefer to stay away from the early 20th century standard practice of flaring the elbow out at 90 degrees while you're shooting a rifle. You know, this is often referred to as chicken winging, because your arm looks like a chicken wing flapping out there. The chicken wing really is an unnatural position when using modern rifle stocks. You know, old muskets and vintage military rifles had stocks with a very straight grip on them, you know, which made the chicken wing stance a more natural position. But modern stock designs have wrists on them that form more of a pistol grip, you know, which makes that elbow drop more natural and comfortable. So elbow height is going to be determined by grip angle. You know, don't force an elbow position because somebody told you to shoot that way. Grip angle will determine elbow height. You know, and the more horizontal the grip is, the higher the elbow needs to be. That's why if you're shooting an AR, your elbow's down here. If you're shooting a musket or an old military vintage rifle, your elbow's going to be up here. So that's all you need to know about the position of your shooting elbow. And lastly, pull the rifle into your shoulder with the dominant hand. You know, this adds stability and lessens the effect of recoil by eliminating any space between the buttstock and the shoulder. So give it a good pull into your shoulder. I mean, don't force it as hard as you can, but definitely don't let it sit loose on your shoulder. Put a little bit of force on it. Cheek weld is the most complicated and divisive subject in the rifle shooting world. Only one thing really matters though. Your cheek weld needs to be the same every time. Also, don't bring your cheek into the stock. What I mean by that is don't mount the rifle into the pocket of your shoulder and then try to bring your cheek down to the stock for the stock weld. You always bring the stock into your cheek first. But there's a problem here. Bringing the rifle into your cheek for the proper sight picture while also keeping the buttstock squarely in the pocket of the shoulder is no perfect task. The first major problem with getting a proper cheek weld is that everybody has a different build. You know, some guys have no neck at all, and I've seen other guys out there that have necks like damn giraffes, you know. Some people have shorter, squattier faces, kind of like I do, and some folks have really long, stretched out faces. And none of these people are going to achieve the proper cheek weld the same way. You know, in order for a rifle stock to get into the shoulder pocket properly while maintaining a cheek weld, some people have to do what's called scrunching. You know, when you scrunch this is when you scrunch your shoulder up to raise your shoulder pocket, and sometimes you even have to scrunch your neck down to get the proper cheek weld. So that's basically scrunching is a compromise in order to get everything aligned correctly. Basically, like I said before, you're going to bring the stock up to the cheek first. You're going to bring it up. When you get good at cheek weld, you could do it all in one fluid motion at the same time. And that's kind of what I'm used to. It's hard for me to break down each step because I'm so used to getting a proper cheek weld in one fluid motion. But you could see, I have to scrunch. You see my shoulder come up right there? I'm not bringing my head down to the rifle stock. I'm bringing the stock to my cheek, and I'm doing a little scrunch. Yeah, my neck has to come down a little bit, but my shoulder has to come up. Because if I'm sitting here rigid like this and I bring it up for a cheek weld, look at that. The toe of this stock is going to leave the bruise of a lifetime if I'm shooting a .338 Win Mag at a moose. So you don't want that. This needs to be down here in the pocket of the shoulder. And in order to get that cheek weld, I'm going to have to scrunch this shoulder up and kind of crook my neck down a little bit. See, it's right there. I'm not canning my head down or bringing my head down to the rifle stock, bringing the stock up to my cheek, but there's a little bit of scrunching involved there. And a lot of people have to compromise and do this. There's very few people on this earth that can just stand there erect and get proper cheek weld while at the same time maintaining a proper mount into the pocket of the shoulder. It's very rare somebody can do that. So in all likelihood, you're going to have to scrunch. You know, the bottom line is that you need to mount the stock to your cheek for a proper cheek weld and sight picture, and do it the same every single time. Even when you peruse through a lot of the gun magazines and gun rags, you'll see a lot of the experts when they're shooting. You see this guy right here has great cheek weld, but he has to do the scrunch. You know, so whether a lot of these pros know it or not, most of them are actually using the scrunch. And here's Wayne, and guess what? Wayne is doing the scrunch. And then move over here. Here's Craig Boddington. Guess what Craig is doing? Craig Boddington is doing the scrunch. You can do everything right that you saw in those previous 3 chapters and still get hammered by recoil. This is because you aren't committed to hold onto the rifle really tight because you're kind of afraid of firm contact with the rifle. When precision shooting and being a keyboard sniper became cool, people were taught to shoot kind of in that free recoil position. You know, even offhand, people were taught not to grip the wrist of the stock and to put minimal tension on the rifle. But this isn't a good idea with a big bore rifle. If you grip with either hand loosely while firing a big bore, you will lose control of the rifle. Your primary hand or trigger hand should be holding the grip firmly with slight rearward pressure into the shoulder. If there's any looseness between the stock and your shoulder right there, you will get punched by a recoil pulse. This is actually what causes most bruising that people see with big bores. You know, you need to hold it in tightly enough to where there's no gap or space or even looseness there. It has to be tight. Otherwise, if there's any gap in there, you're gonna get punched. And that's how you get your shoulder bruised. You need to shoot a big bore like you're bracing for impact. And now let's talk about the support hand and what to do with that. Even many expert riflemen tend to get this wrong. When you watch both novices and so-called experts shoot a big bore, what do you always see? Well, you see this exaggerated muzzle rise after every shot with a big bore. And to tell you the truth, those guys are not controlling their rifle. You should always have a firm grip on the forend with the support hand, and good rearward pressure should be applied. Don't apply pressure up or down because that's obviously going to throw the shot off. All pressure is applied backwards into the shoulder in the same direction that the trigger gets pulled. Here's some video of me shooting a 416, a 458 lot, and a 505 Gibbs. Pay particular attention to how much the rifle moves while I'm firing it. Notice how I'm in complete control of the rifle through the entire process. And lastly, let's talk about cheek weld pressure. Don't loosely place your face on the stock because that's a good way to get busted in the chops during recoil. Always get a really firm cheek weld when shooting a heavy recoiling rifle. And also, on that same note, follow through your shots. One of the guys that helped train me years ago when I was having problems with heavy recoiling rifles told me to ride through the recoil. And basically what he meant by that is to follow through my shot. And that means, you know, after the trigger breaks, you know, I'm gonna hold the trigger back, ride the recoil pulse, come forward. And at that time, after the recoil pulse has settled down, I can come up, run the bolt, take the rifle off the sticks, do whatever I have to do. But it's important that when the trigger breaks, you don't pop up off the rifle like a surprised prairie dog coming out of its hole. I especially see people do this on the bench. You know, I'm watching them try to shoot groups on the bench and they'll break the shot, and as soon as the rifle goes off, they'll go, huh? Don't do that. Always follow through, then you can run the bolt, do whatever you want. But that's also an important facet of not only marksmanship, but also controlling the rifle during recoil. Basically, the same principles that apply to shooting offhand with a dangerous game rifle also apply to shooting off of sticks. Your first shot on an animal on a dangerous game hunt will almost always be off the shooting sticks. So you need to have this figured out before you go to Africa. When using a medium or small bore rifle, maybe your 30-06 for plains game, many people use their support hand to hold the sticks while they shoot, and that's perfectly fine. But with a dangerous game rifle, the forend is going to jump right out of the sticks if you don't control it. So with the heavy recoiling rifle, you need to grip the forend firmly when it's on the sticks, just like you do when you're shooting offhand. So I recommend that you grip the forend of the rifle exactly like you do when you're shooting offhand when you're shooting off the sticks. And not only does this control the rifle, it also adds continuity to all your shooting positions with your dangerous game rifle. And, of course, always do a lot of practice from the sticks to get this position figured out. Don't wait till a Dagaboy is staring at you from 40 yards away to try to figure out how to control recoil while you're using the shooting sticks. You should always do lots of practice before you leave. On my 2022 buffalo hunt in Zimbabwe, this is what my PH Keith Wall had to say.
On par and shooting off sticks. You do a lot of shooting off sticks, and you have to shoot quickly here. So as soon as you get on the sticks, be ready to shoot.
Even with the big bore rifle, you're going to need to zero your rifle with the ammunition that you'll be using or hunting with. Also, if you load your own ammunition, you're going to need to do load development for that ammo. Unfortunately, this is going to require you to shoot on a bench. Felt recoil can be more than double when you shoot a rifle off the bench. But there are some ways to make things easier when you need to zero your rifle or do load development with a dangerous game rifle. The simplest thing to do is to use a passed recoil pad. You basically wear these. And I highly recommend the Magnum version of that pad. But the drawback to using the passed recoil pad is that they do require a little bit more eye relief when you're using a scope. So, sometimes you can just lean forward a little bit into it and make up for that, but you're going to have to compensate a little bit for eye relief when you use these. But what most guys do that shoot dangerous game rifles, and what I do myself, is that I use a contraption known as a lead sled. And a lead sled is basically a cradle that holds your rifle, but it allows the addition of weight on it to mitigate recoil. And this system right here will eliminate recoil off the bench better than any other method available. But it will be a little bit less precise than shooting from a proper shooting rest on the bench. But there's also some precautions that you need to take when you use the Caldwell lead sled. So if you go to internet forums for advice, the keyboard commandos and people who had never owned a lead sled in their life will try to tell you that lead sleds will break your stock if you use them. Well, that can happen if you misuse them or you use them wrong, but it'll never happen if you use these the way that I do. When you're using a lead sled, the rifle needs to move a little bit during recoil, and putting too much weight on the sled prevents the rifle from moving, and it can do damage to the stock. Most people out there put 50 to 75 pounds of lead on these, but I highly recommend that you put no more than 25 pounds on your lead sled. And trust me, 25 pounds of weight on a lead sled will make any big bore rifle easy to handle. So that's all you need. Don't go beyond that. When you buy these, they also come with a Velcro strap that goes over the top of the barrel and everything right here. And I'll tell you, don't strap the front of the rifle to the rest like a lot of people do. When you shoot these, just, use your support hand and ride out the recoil like you would if you were shooting off of sticks. If you use a lead sled like this, you'll never break a stock while you're zeroing your rifle or doing load development. And you'll be able to use your big bore on the bench without the pain. And lastly, try standing while you're using a rest like this. That alone will mitigate a lot of felt recoil. With the right setup, you can still be very accurate in the standing position while using a rest. Managing recoil is 50% physical and 50% mental. The physical part is all technique and proper equipment. The mental part is eliminating your fear of the gun so that you don't make mistakes. You won't feel any recoil at all while you're actually shooting at an animal in the field. You only feel recoil during practice, and everybody knows this. And if you think about it, that's proof that a lot of the felt recoil is actually in your head. Think about that for a second. When I teach children how to shoot, I like to tell them to always imagine that they're on a real hunt, shooting at a real animal. I tell them to blur the target out mentally and replace it in their mind with the animal that they're hunting. This always keeps them focused on the target rather than on the rifle, and they tend to forget about recoil for the most part. The easiest way, though, to get comfortable behind a big bore rifle is to do a lot of dry fire practice. Set up your cell phone and record yourself shooting up close, and you'll see yourself flinching or torquing that rifle while the trigger breaks. If you have a scope on your rifle, you can even see your flinch in the reticle while your trigger breaks. So dry fire practice is a really good way to overcome mental errors while shooting. Muzzle brakes do in fact reduce felt recoil, but I don't believe that they belong on a hunting rifle, and certainly not on a dangerous game rifle. Sound suppressors, I actually think they work great, but they're illegal in many states, including my own, and they're also illegal in most African countries. And they make a dangerous game rifle just too long, so we're not going to cover sound suppressors and muzzle brakes in this video. But the design and features of a rifle can have a big impact on felt recoil. Rifle weight itself is a huge factor. In my opinion, a dangerous game rifle should weigh at least 9 pounds loaded. And I myself actually prefer a rifle that's 10 pounds or a little bit more. The latest carbon fiber rifle fad really doesn't bode well for recoil reduction. A recoil pad can make a huge difference in felt recoil too. And those hard old school rubber pads, like the ones on your old Ruger, didn't work worth a shit. But a modern Packmeyer, Limsaver, or Kicky's recoil pad will actually do wonders. Stock design is also very important. Like this. See this straight comb stock right here? Most dangerous game rifles have gone to this because this straight comb prevents muzzle rise and actually makes the rifle easier to control through recoil. Also, a wider butt pad footprint spreads out the force exerted on the shoulder, which also greatly reduces the possibility of pain and bruising. Most dangerous game custom rifle builders add a recoil reducer to the stock. Some of these are mercury filled and some of them are mechanical. And I've used the Edwards recoil reducer in several of my rifle builds. And I have one stock that has a mercury recoil reducer in it. And these actually work, believe it or not. But you can feel a small reduction in felt recoil when you use these. But don't expect drastic results. It's just a little bit. Many hunters also tend to give themselves an edge by making strategic clothing choices. Obviously, when you're hunting in the winter with a big puffy jacket on, that'll pad some of the recoil pulse, but that isn't always the reality while we're hunting, especially if you're in a place like Africa. The famous safari style shirt with or shooter's shirt with a quilted padding patch on the shoulders. It's widely used by both dangerous game hunters and shotgunners, but don't expect drastic results with these either. Then we have the various forms of padded undershirts. See, there's a recoil pad in there. And I believe this is the Cabela's design right here with the pad in it. And these padded undershirts actually work really well, in my opinion, surprisingly well. But if you're shooting in maybe 100-degree heat, you probably don't want to wear an undershirt. But if you could tolerate an undershirt, these shooting shirts actually work very well. And I'll post a link to this in the video description below. I think this is that brand that they call Shock Eater or something like that. And I know the gel-filled pad in this is actually made in the USA. So I'll put a link to that in the description below. But just be mindful that when you use anything with a pad in it, even though those pads may be a 1/4 inch thick, it might change your eye relief just a little bit. So just to give you some background on myself, I have rotator cuff issues in both shoulders. I've had many dislocations, and I broke my collarbone on my right side, which still hurts decades later. Most of this is from a lifetime of martial arts and dirt bikes. But even with all of this, shooting a big bore rifle doesn't hurt me. This is because I set myself up for success, not failure. And I set myself up for success through technique, mental preparedness, and good equipment choices. I basically solved the recoil equation. If you really want to hunt large or dangerous game, but you're hesitant about shooting a big recoiling rifle, I hope this video gave you a little bit more confidence in moving forward with your plans. For every problem, there's a solution, and hopefully I provided my viewers with solutions in this video. You can reach me with any questions or comments at desertdogoutdoors@gmail.com. Thank you for watching, and as always, good hunting.